In the heart of Lagos, where the streets buzzed like restless bees and the sky carried the weight of dust and dreams, Raymond Okoro's life was neatly stitched together. A respected architect known for designing sleek, towering offices in Victoria Island, he was married to Amaka, a woman as brilliant as she was beautiful. She ran a boutique fashion brand that was beginning to attract international attention. Their two children, Tobe and Nena, were smart, curious, and loved beyond measure. To the world, Raymond was a fulfilled man. But fulfillment had become a prison. At night, he lay beside Amaka, listening to the soft rhythm of her breath, and felt nothing. Conversations felt rehearsed. The laughter was polite. Their lives had become routine, predictably safe, and painfully dull. He didn't know when the love had gone stale, perhaps the day he started envying her success, or maybe the moment she stopped asking about his dreams. Then he met Kemi. It happened at a high-profile architecture conference in Port Harcourt. Kemi was unlike anyone he had ever met. Tall, with a graceful, deliberate way of speaking, each word dipped in honey, each glance loaded with mystery. Her presence was electric, almost cinematic. She introduced herself casually, her lips curving into a smile that hinted at secrets. There was something tragic behind her eyes, something broken and alluring. They talked over dinner, then drinks. One night turned into 3. By the 5th day, he was no longer calling Amaka. He didn't even feel guilt, just adrenaline. Kemi told him she had no family. No baggage. No rules. "Let's be free together," she whispered. When he returned to Lagos, the decision was already made. He began withdrawing from Amaka emotionally, then financially. He opened a secret account, purchased a burner phone, and started researching ways to disappear without a trace. The plan took shape like a twisted blueprint. He rented a car under a fake name, drove it into the waters off the 3rd mainland bridge, left his clothes and a suicide note inside. The car sank into silence. Divers found it days later, but his body was never recovered. The media ran headlines: "Top architect vanishes. Suicide suspected." Amaka was inconsolable. His children cried themselves to sleep for weeks. Friends and colleagues mourned. A memorial service was held, but far from the tears and tributes, Raymond, now living as Ray Adebayo, started a new life in Abuja, hand in hand with Kemi. He had died to be reborn. Raymond, now calling himself Ray Adebayo, slipped into his new identity like a tailor-fitted suit. In Abuja, he felt invisible, freed from the expectations of his past life, the suffocating familiarity of Lagos, and the guilt he had buried at the bottom of the lagoon. Kemi welcomed him into a world that was strangely prepared for him. She already had a luxurious flat in Jabi, a housekeeper who barely spoke, and connections that stretched into private lounges, gated neighborhoods, and exclusive circles of power. Ray asked no questions. He simply adjusted. Changed his accent slightly. Grew a beard. Took freelance design jobs under aliases. When people asked about his past, Kemi would answer for him with a smooth, dismissive smile: "Ray's a traveler. Not everything should be explained." They married quietly. No guests, no family, no announcements. The officiant was paid handsomely and sworn to silence. For a while, Ray convinced himself he had won. He had Kemi's undivided attention, unfiltered intimacy, and a thrilling unpredictability that made each day feel like a new story. Her love was consuming, fiery, obsessive, yet oddly cold when he tried to dig into her past. She would flinch at old photos, insist they never take new ones, and avoid mirrors like they were cursed. Ray once caught her sitting in the dark, whispering to herself. When he asked what she was doing, she smiled and said, "Just remembering who I used to be." Still, he ignored the signs. Within a space of 3 years, they had 2 children, Zikora and Dara. The children looked like him. Zikora had his eyes, Dara his lips and crooked smile. And so, life went on. They both raised them with so much love. Their family was an envy to other couples living around their neighborhood. Their children were bright, intelligent, and early well-behaved. Ray never saw them misbehaved, he was grateful and felt he now had a perfect life. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Amaka grieved and rebuilt. Her boutique expanded across West Africa, and her fashion brand was recognized at an international expo. She no longer wept at night. But she still had nightmares. In one of them, she saw Raymond drowning, and smiling. Then, one day, a business associate suggested she expand to Abuja. "It's time to bring your light to the capital," the woman said warmly. Fate, as always, was listening. Waiting. Amaka stepped into Abuja like a woman reborn. Her suitcase rolled behind her across the polished floor of the Transcorp Hilton, and her eyes scanned the city's skyline from her hotel balcony that evening. It was her first time in the capital since Raymond's death. Abuja felt cleaner than Lagos, quieter, more ordered, but under the silence, there was something unfamiliar. Something stirring. She was in town for a 5-day business retreat and gala organized by one of West Africa's top retail distributors. The opportunity had come through a close friend and investor, Ngozi, who insisted this expansion could change everything. "This city is your next canvas, Amaka," Ngozi had said. "And your art deserves to be everywhere." The second evening of her stay brought her to the Palm Grove Hotel, a luxurious venue near Maitama, for a high-profile dinner with fashion delegates. As speeches and networking consumed the night, Amaka stepped away to take a phone call. The moment she exited into the courtyard, the world stopped. She saw them. There, across the stone walkway, beneath a canopy of fairy lights, stood a man in a navy blue blazer, laughing gently as a woman fed their 2 children bites of cake. The woman's profile was distinct, tall, elegant, with striking cheekbones and radiant skin. But it wasn't her that made Amaka freeze. It was the man. He leaned down. Ruffled the boy's hair. The movement. The body language. That hand. That ring. That scar, Raymond. She mouthed, her heart thudding so hard she could barely hear herself think. She stumbled forward. Her heels clicked on the floor. Her eyes locked onto the woman's face. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Kemi, her cousin, dead Kemi, declared deceased in a fire 7 years ago in Ibadan. "Kemi?" She gasped. The woman turned and met Amaka's eyes calmly. Unbothered. The same chilling serenity she had in childhood, as if chaos was always someone else's problem. Amaka's scream ripped through the courtyard. "Raymond! Kemi! You're dead! You're both dead!" Panic erupted. Chairs clattered. Guests turned. Someone dropped a wine glass. The children held on to Kemi tightly. She looked at Amaka, then down at them, and then, she was gone. No one saw her leave. One blink and she vanished. Just like that, people gasped. Some whispered. Others thought Amaka had lost her mind. But Raymond didn't move. His body locked. His mouth hung open. His knees buckled as he collapsed onto the ground, trembling violently. Amaka ran to him, grabbing his shirt. "You're supposed to be dead," she shouted, tears streaming. "I buried you, Raymond. I grieved you." But all he could whisper, over and over, was her name, Kemi. 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 The hotel staff called for medical help. Guests stood back, horrified, confused. A few filmed with their phones. The incident would soon go viral, but at that moment, only one thing mattered. Kemi, the woman he had left everything for, had disappeared, right in front of hundreds, and no one, not even the city, could explain how. Raymond was admitted into a high-end private psychiatric facility in Guarimpa. The doctors called it an acute dissociative episode brought on by extreme psychological shock. He hadn't said a word since he collapsed. His eyes stared at the ceiling. He didn't eat for 2 days. Amaka sat across from the glass wall that separated visitors from patients. She didn't speak either. Her mind played everything back, the sight of her dead cousin, the scream, the way Raymond trembled. Her cousin Kemi had been buried years ago. The body was recovered. A funeral held. But now, a woman with her face had reappeared, alive, beautiful, and married to Amaka's husband, a husband she had mourned and buried in her heart. The hospital counselor tried to warn her. Sometimes trauma plays tricks. You may have seen someone who just looks like your cousin. You're in shock. But Amaka wasn't confused. She knew Kemi. The scar above her left brow from when they jumped off a mango tree as kids. The tiny mole on her right collarbone. She knew what she saw, and she knew the man she buried was now behind that glass. 3 days after admission, Raymond finally spoke. He requested to see only one person, Amaka, the nurse said gently. He asked for you. Inside the padded, dimly lit room, Raymond sat hunched over, a thin blanket draped over his knees. His beard had grown coarse. His eyes were red. When he saw Amaka, he began to cry, loud, ugly, broken sobs. I didn't know, he whispered. Amaka sat beside him but didn't touch him. Didn't know what? She asked coldly, that she wasn't. Right. I thought she was just mysterious. I met her in Port Harcourt, her energy, it consumed me. He rocked back and forth. I needed to escape. You were flying. I felt small. I didn't know how to live in your shadow anymore. Kemi offered light. But it became a tunnel. No way out. Amaka's voice cracked. You let your children believe you were dead. You let me believe it. For what? A thrill? A woman you didn't even know? Raymond covered his face. I didn't think she'd vanish. I thought I could build something new. Amaka, please forgive me. Amaka stared at him, heart racing. You were sleeping beside a ghost, she whispered. No, he said flatly, looking up. I was married to one. The silence between them was suffocating, and in that silence, one truth echoed. Raymond hadn't just abandoned his family, he had invited something into the world that shouldn't have returned. Please, for the sake of the children, have mercy on me. He knelt down, cried, rolled on the floor asking for Amaka to forgive and take him back. Amaka told him that he was dead to her. We have buried, grieved and moved on. If Kemi did not vanish, will you be here asking for forgiveness? You put us into emotional trauma, you wanted to be dead to us, remain dead and don't come close to me and my children. Amaka couldn't rest. Every attempt to reason through what had happened left her with more questions than answers. She sat up at night replaying Kemi's face, her voice, the way she vanished without a trace. She refused to believe it was just trauma or imagination. The truth had roots, deep ones, and she was ready to dig until she found them. She traveled to Abuja 2 days later. The fire that supposedly killed Kemi had happened in 2018. According to family members at the time, Kemi had been staying temporarily in an old warehouse converted into a makeshift studio apartment. A faulty generator had exploded at night. 5 people were said to have died. The bodies were burned beyond recognition. Identification was done with personal effects and location. Amaka stood in front of the new supermarket now built over that old warehouse site. Bright banners waved in the wind. Children ran in and out with snacks. But across the street, an old, abandoned chapel stood quiet and dust-covered, overlooked, forgotten. Drawn to it, Amaka crossed and entered through the creaking wooden door. The air inside was thick and stale. Shafts of sunlight cut through the broken stained glass. As she moved down the aisle, she saw a rusted metal trunk behind the pulpit. Inside were scattered charred notebooks, a half-melted crucifix, and a scorched Bible. She pulled the Bible from the pile, its spine broken. Pages warped from fire. Hidden inside was a journal, burned at the corners, but intact enough to read. It was Kemi's. The handwriting was unmistakable. So were the words, they think I'm dead. Maybe I am. But I don't feel gone. I feel more alive than ever. They called me cursed. Said I was strange. Maybe I am strange. But I've seen things, felt things. And I know I don't belong to the life I had. Amaka flipped to the final page. I saw him. In a vision. A man who carries the burden of another name. He will find me. Or I'll find him. Either way, I will love. Even if it breaks the world around us. Chills ran down Amaka's spine. It wasn't just obsession. It wasn't even madness. It was prophecy. When she returned to Abuja, she carried the journal in a sealed envelope. She requested access to the children, Zikora and Dara, who were now under the care of the state while Raymond remained hospitalized. They were polite, quiet. Too quiet, she showed Zikora a picture of her childhood with Kemi. The boy studied it, then smiled gently. She told us you used to braid her hair. She said you made her laugh. Amaka's lips parted. She told you about me? Zikora nodded. She said you were the only person who ever saw her clearly. But you stopped looking. Before Amaka could respond, Dara spoke. She said to tell you not to be afraid. Afraid of what? Both children looked at each other. She's still watching, Dara whispered. Raymond was discharged under strict supervision. The hospital ruled his mental collapse as trauma-induced and not a permanent psychotic condition. He was given medication and a court order to report bi-weekly for psychiatric evaluation. But Raymond wasn't focused on recovery, he was obsessed. Kemi was gone, no trace. No forwarding address. No contact. Her phone line was dead. Her social media wiped clean. Even the luxury apartment in Port Harcourt they once shared had been emptied overnight. All their pictures, documents, wedding videos, gone, like they'd never existed. Raymond stood in the apartment alone, touching the bare wall where once a family photo hung. His mind spiraled. He remembered nights they shared wine and spoke about the stars. Nights she cried in her sleep, murmuring in Yoruba about fires and bones. Nights when she would suddenly wake, stare blankly into the dark, and whisper, I don't belong here. And then it struck him, he never met her family. She'd always told him they lived abroad or had died. She had no childhood photos. No family heirlooms. Nothing that traced her existence before the day they met. Raymond clutched his head. Who did I marry? He muttered aloud. He contacted a private investigator. It took 5 days for the report to come back. There was no record of a woman named Kemi Igioman Nwachukwu with her exact birthdate in any Nigerian registry post, 2015. The name was registered before, but death was recorded in 2018. Fire accident. Presumed dead. Buried, she didn't exist. Not in the legal sense, and yet. She had lived with him. Loved him. Birthed 2 children. The investigator looked unsettled. Sir, I don't know what kind of game this is, but whoever this woman is. She's not who she said she was. Or she was someone you were never supposed to find. Raymond arrived in Ibadan just after dawn. The sky was still bruised from the night, and a thin mist floated like forgotten smoke over the silent streets. The cemetery was tucked away on the outskirts of the city, older than most remembered, with cracked marble headstones and weeds that whispered secrets to the wind. He had no flowers, no candles, just a folded newspaper clipping in his pocket, the report of the fire that claimed Kemi's life in 2018. He gripped it like a compass as he walked through rows of graves, scanning names, dates, initials etched in stone, and then, he found it. Kemi Igioman Nwachukwu, born, 1989, died, 2018, in death, peace, in life, mystery. The inscription chilled him. He sank to his knees, staring at the headstone as if it could explain itself. He placed his hand on the damp earth. For the first time, he let the truth settle over him like a second skin. She had died. That part was real, so who had he been living with? He touched the soil again. It was solid. No signs of disturbance. No fake burial. No recent digging. A low voice broke the silence. You looking for peace or answers? Raymond turned sharply. An old groundskeeper stood a few feet away, leaning on a rusted shovel, his eyes shrouded beneath a wide hat. Answers, Raymond replied. She was my wife. Or someone pretending to be her. The man walked closer, squinting. Kemi. Ah. The fire girl. Many strange things about that case. Raymond's heart quickened. What do you mean? The old man sat on a nearby stone slab and sighed. They brought 5 bodies here. Couldn't identify them properly. Said one of them was her. Based on a ring and a bag. But nobody saw the body. Not even the family. They buried sealed coffins. Why sealed? Too badly burned, they said. But her mother cried that day, said she didn't believe her daughter was inside. Raymond's breath caught. And you? Did you believe it? The man stared off into the distance, his voice low. Son, the dead don't return. But sometimes, the forgotten do. And when they do, they wear many faces. Raymond felt the weight of those words. Was Kemi a runaway who faked her death? Was she hiding from something? Someone? Was the fire the cover? Or the truth? He pulled out a picture from his wallet, a photo of Kemi with Zikora and Dara. He handed it to the old man. Did you ever see her again? After the burial? The man studied it long. No. But once, maybe a year later, a woman stood here crying in the rain. I couldn't see her face, but she sang a lullaby. Yoruba. Said it was for the children. Raymond's hands trembled. That was Kemi's favorite lullaby. He remembered her humming it when pregnant with Dara. Do you remember the words? The old man nodded. But it's not a song for the living. It's a goodbye for the ones who leave twice. Raymond stood slowly, knees weak. Everything he thought he understood was unraveling. The woman he loved. The woman he buried. Were they one and the same, or neither at all? Raymond returned to Lagos carrying more questions than answers. The city's noise, once comforting, now grated against his nerves. Every honk, every voice, every flash of a woman's face in a crowd made his stomach tighten. Was Kemi watching him? Was she hiding in plain sight? Back at the house, Amaka asked him with an odd mix of concern and quiet resentment, what are you doing here? She'd been caring for the children, feeding them, dressing them, taking them to school. He tried to get close to the children he had with Amaka, but Amaka asked him to leave them alone. He started crying, asking for their forgiveness. You look worse than when you left, she said plainly, standing in the doorway with her arms folded. I found her grave, Raymond murmured, dropping his bag. She's really dead. But she also isn't. Amaka stared at him, confused. What are you talking about? She lived with me. We had kids. She laughed, cooked, argued like anyone else. I held her. I loved her. But the grave is real, Amaka. I saw it. The records don't lie. Then you married a ghost? She scoffed, half mocking, half afraid. I don't know. Maybe I married her memory. Or someone wearing her skin. Amaka turned away, shaking her head. You need help. Raymond later returned to the place where he now stays with his children with Kemi. He wandered into the children's room. Zikora was drawing on the wall with crayons, 2 stick figures holding hands beside a large house and a smaller woman with no face. Raymond crouched beside him. Who's that? He asked. Zikora shrugged. Mommy. Why doesn't she have a face? The boy's eyes darkened. Because she said she doesn't remember who she is anymore. Raymond's heart dropped. Ziko, when did she tell you that? The boy looked up. Last night. From the mirror. Raymond froze. He turned to the vanity mirror in the corner of the room. He approached it slowly, his eyes meeting his own reflection, tired, aged, broken. Then something shifted. The light flickered. For a second, he saw a blur, a woman standing behind him. The shape was familiar, slender, graceful, long hair falling over her shoulders. He spun around. No one. The air turned cold. He grabbed the mirror and yanked it off the wall, slamming it to the floor. It shattered into jagged shards, fragments of his face now broken across the floor. Amaka, who came to visit them, heard the noise, rushed in. "What's wrong with you?" She was there. She was in the mirror. "There's no one here, Raymond." The children began to cry. Dara clung to Amaka's leg while Zipporah crawled under the bed. Raymond stood over the glass, panting. "I need to find her," he muttered. "I need to know what happened. Why she came back. Why she left again." "You need to stop before you lose everything," Amaka said sharply. "The children need peace. You need rest. Kemi is gone, whoever she was." But Raymond's eyes were already distant. He didn't believe it. "Not entirely, she was my cousin. Not just a cousin. We grew up like sisters. Until she changed, she started seeing things. Saying people were after her. Talking about spirits, shadows, ancestral vengeance. Things that scared even her mother. We thought it was grief after her fiancé died. Then she set fire to her own apartment and burnt beyond recognition. We buried an empty coffin with her ashes. I have forgiven you, but we can't be together again. I will only give you access to your children just because of God and because I need them to grow up knowing their father. Just know that I am doing it for the sake of the children." Raymond was grateful to her, tried to hug her, but she stopped him from hugging her. She said, "Remember, it's just for the sake of the children." A knock echoed from the front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Raymond stood, but when he opened it, there was no one there, only a white envelope resting on the doormat. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "She's waiting for you. Come alone mid." Echo at midnight. Echo Bridge stood like a long, ancient serpent under the moonlight, silent, suspended, and watching. The city hummed faintly in the background, but here, above the lagoon, time felt frozen. Raymond arrived at exactly 12 a.m., just as the note instructed. He parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. The envelope still trembled in his coat pocket. The words burned into his mind. "She's waiting for you." He didn't know if it was grief or guilt that brought him here. Maybe both. Maybe madness. But he needed answers, and he wasn't leaving without them. As he stepped onto the bridge, the wind grew colder. A figure stood by the railing, tall, slim, with hair that shimmered silver under the moonlight. Kemi. She turned slowly, the same serene smile on her lips as the first day they met at the gallery. Her eyes glowed, not with light, but with memory, deep, layered, eternal. "Raymond," she said softly. He stopped 10 feet away, heart pounding. "You're dead," he said. "You died. There's a death certificate. A grave." "How?" She tilted her head. "Death isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just a door. And sometimes that door doesn't close properly." He shook his head. "What are you saying?" "I loved you," she whispered. "And you loved me. But you belonged to someone else when we met. You lied. You faked your death. You chose me. But built us on betrayal." Raymond blinked, stunned. "You knew." "I always knew. So why did you stay? Why build a life with me?" "Because even the dead long for love. But love built on lies can't breathe forever." He stepped closer. "The children. Are they mine?" A shadow of sadness crossed her face. "They are of you. And of me. But they're innocent, Raymond. Keep them safe." Tears welled in his eyes. "Why now? Why leave like this?" She looked past him to the skyline. "Because your past found you. The illusion is broken. I can't stay where truth has rooted." He reached out instinctively, but her form began to flicker, like heat rising off asphalt. "I never wanted to hurt you," he choked. She smiled, the same smile she gave the children at bedtime. You didn't hurt me, Raymond. You freed me. Now free yourself. In one blink, she vanished, like mist drawn back into the night. No sound. No trace. Only the soft rustle of air where she once stood. Raymond fell to his knees, sobbing quietly, the weight of all his choices crashing down. He didn't return home that night. For weeks, he wandered Lagos, lost in silence, watching the faces of strangers hoping for glimpses of the past. Amaka took in the children Raymond had with Kemi permanently. Gave them a fresh start, trained them together with her own children, trying her best to give the children the best in life while her business flourished, prospered and grew wide, known all over the world. Raymond was never the same again. Some say he now sleeps under bridges. Others say he writes letters to himself daily, addressed to the one who left too much behind. But those who knew him knew this: he had loved a woman who had no place in the world of the living, and when she left, she took the last part of him that was still alive.